Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us. Welcome to Primacati's SAP For Me webcast, where we will walk you through the most important functions SAP For Me has to offer. You'll learn the differences between cases and service requests, how to open new and check on existing cases, and we'll also the Customer Interaction Center, or the CIC, and how best to contact them. Before we jump in, I'd like to take time to make some introductions. My fellow speaker is none other than Mr. Scott Greer. Scott is our Vice President of Ariba Center of Excellence. And my name is Callie Gantz, and I am your designated Customer Success Account Manager here at Primacati. Our agenda today will cover an introduction of SAP For Me, how to log on and customize your homepage, getting support and the steps involved in opening cases, additional tabs and functions, and what the CIC has to offer. So with that being said, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us again, and let's begin. So SAP For Me is your new single entry point to SAP's support. This customer portal makes managing support-related tasks simpler by using a set of digital self-service features to easily request support and resolve issues, all while still offering an end-to-end view of your personalized product portfolio. We at Primacati believe that SAP did listen to their customers and took Ariba Connect and made it better in SAP For Me. At this time, I will go ahead and let Scott take over and we'll begin our demo.
Okay, well, thank you all very much again for joining. It's great to see a lot of familiar names out there. And the couple of pieces, just as a sort of a precursor, I'll share my screen real quick. I want to make sure I'm sharing the right windows. There we go. So again, the idea around it was just to sort of show you, if you're not familiar yet with SAP For Me, or sort of what the format itself looks like, if you're still used to working in Connect. This is a little bit different with these how it's set up, how it's aligned, how it's arranged, on the screen itself. So the idea behind here is just to sort of walk you through sort of basic features and basic things like you and your teams may need to look at and review. I know in working with a lot of the teams that are on the call, it may be more of the service case area, where Ariba does now have different terminology for that. You'll see them reference service requests versus cases now. They've been sort of pushing more of the case nomenclature now, or as far as, sort of how they're describing, specific issues that are submitted to Ariba support. So I'll do my best. I'm still old school from that regard. So I still sometimes will still say SRs. But really we're talking about the cases, and that the same idea behind it remains the same. So if it's an issue that you're running into, your site's not working as you expect it to, or even at times you can even submit sort of questions. At times they will sort of push you into different areas like they normally do. But we'll just walk through what one of those looks like here in the new SAP For Me format, and sort of how to interact with that, because it does look different than what it does on the Connect side. Sort of what you'll see, as Callie had mentioned, as you walk in, as you first sign on to SAP For Me, there's a couple of ways to find, this site. Initially, a lot of times I'll just do a Google search. Just type in SAP For Me, and any of these initial links will be, ones you can go to. It's going to prompt you to this main page the first time around. What we're going to be in right now is it's just a demo realm. So it doesn't have all the functionality that you will have in your SAP For Me instance, but it does allow us to highlight, some of the key areas that you may want to sort of focus more of your time and energies on of becoming more familiar with. The sign in, this is where you'll actually sign in with your specific S user ID. And then it will recognize you and your organization, based on your S user ID designation. Now, you may have more than one S user ID, for one reason or another. But as with most Ariba applications, as we all know, your access gets you into the realm. So it actually will get you into the screen. But what you're able to see is going to be very specific to what your permissions are in the system. So this is no different than an Ariba module, an SAP ERP module, very similar in that regard. Anything you can see in here is very much permission driven. So you'll see, again, on the demo site, it does look a little bit different. I will pop into the Primacati site just briefly to sort of walk through some of the cases, submitting a new case request. So you'll be able to see, sort of based on, what I have and my permissions versus what others might be able to see. You'll be able to see, how those might differ. But what you'll see, depending again on your permissions, you're going to see, sort of the home category up here. That's just your main dashboard. You have your edit button here in the upper right hand corner, and if you click on the edit, this says, what do you want to have visible on your main screen? So this is very similar to a lot of the Ariba modules and sort of dashboard management. You can click, unclick. Ariba does also recommend, certain things based on, sort of user history, sort of what is typically added to a dashboard page. But as you go down, there's more information as well that you can add, to sort of more personalize your site. Once that is done, obviously, you can just sort of drag and drop, again, similar to the dashboard views. If I want the quick partnership in a different area, I want SAP to be here versus there. Makes it a lot easier as far as a UI experience to be able to configure and sort of base, have really at your forefront what's most important or what do you use most often. But as you go through here, so you'll see customer success. So when you click on, if you have access to some of these tabs, you'll be able to see what some of the details are behind it. So, some of these might be, if it's something to do with more of your sales model. So again, this is where the permission-based setup will be helpful, because if I'm only worried about delivery, or I'm only worried about sales, or I'm only worried about, whatever that might be, you can make this experience, very specific, to what you're most interested in and what you're responsible to manage and maintain. But like you see up here, it talks about contracts, renewals, consumptions, different projects, and then levels of support. Then you also have access, again, the help portal. That's one that we currently use on the Ariba Connect side, Learning Hub. So it is a lot of information where you can click on these, and based again on your S user permissions in the system, it will direct you to those specific locations. When you get into finance and legal, this is where it starts talking about, some of your financials, like as far as like, even like POs, where it's talking about if you have cloud versus on-premise, what are your enterprise agreements, different billing allocations. At times, we also use this if we're going on a training, Ariba sends us an invoice. We can actually pay it directly from this site versus having to worry about, getting an email, processing it sort of outside of the system. You can also add on a lot of these, especially on the billing side, you can even add credit cards or different payment methods to be able to manage that a lot more efficiently. Partner solutions, like this would be specific. We're a partner for SAP Ariba, so this is something that we would manage. But as a straight up customer, you may not see, sort of that side of it. But then you go down into products and portfolios. So this is really, what have we purchased? What do we have available? And then, really, what are the solution areas? What type is it? Are we talking cloud versus on-premise? They can even talk about, the different systems and orders that are tied into here. Again, there's a lot of information here in the system, and I know as part of the documentation that we'll send out after the call, it'll provide more information and more background to sort of help navigate, through some of these different areas. And as always, there always is a help button there, get assistance. So if there are questions that you're running into as you're walking through your site, it's always readily available for you to get additional help and support. My colleague Andrew will also be pulling up, you may also be familiar with this already, but a new sort of help portal specifically for SAP For Me, but it's called the CIC, the Customer Interaction Center. And from there, it can actually be sort of chat dialogue with somebody from on the support side. You can also request a call. You can do other ways of getting a lot of your questions answered. So per usual, there's a lot of different ways to get information to help you get information that you need or be able to resolve issues that you're running into and experiencing. On the sales and marketing side, again, this is going to be more so, probably for, just what is part of the pipeline, how are we looking at for deals? Again, this might be more really driven, more on the partner side. But this will be, again, very specific to your portfolio or your access or your permissions with your S user ID. The ones that we're going to spend a little bit more time in here is where it's just the services and support. So this is one, again, will look a bit different, but when you're looking at Ariba Connect, a lot of the same information still applies. So when you're looking at knowledge base, so that's really, your, again, I also have KBAs over here as well. But this is really where you're going to start looking at, where do I get information? When I go into Ariba Connect, I do a search for specific topics or specific bits of information. I need a guide on how to do approval flows, or I need to understand, how to complete an SLP questionnaire. Like, you'll still have all that information available here. It'll just be rerouting you back into that same Ariba Connect or the SAP Help portal to make sure you're getting the same level of support. And then when you get into the cases, some of this, again, may not be, available much. But this is really what it will look like. And this looks very similar to what we saw on the Ariba Connect side. When you go into manage cases, it's going to tell you, here's all of your open cases. And it's going to give you all the details at whether you input that into the case itself, or, if it's a case where, this is being pushed back to the customer for certain levels of support, it's going to have your levels of priority. And again, sometimes it misses information. So, there will be that interaction sort of back and forth between Ariba support and the customer still. But this is really where you'll find a lot of your current cases that are open. If we look at, sort of creating a new one, so you get this one, get support, so cases, expert chat. I was going to go into our own realm, but let me see sort of what this will do. So, okay, so perfect. So this is really what it will look like once we actually start to create a new case. So it's going to ask you, is this something you've already started? Is this a different draft? Or, are there ones, I see the ones I've already started. Do I still need these? And I can continue to edit it, I can delete it, or I can look for more information, sort of based on what was currently provided. If this is a completely different issue, then we would just start with the report new issue category. Then it's going to, talk about, and this is the same process flow really as we do with current case management. So it's just going to ask you, what realm is this tied to, or what customer is this tied to? And within your listing, since your S user is based on your customer information, you're going to be able to see, I'll be able to see Primacati test, Primacati production, Primacati parent, Primacati child. So you'll still have all those different individual designations available to you. And if there's any other realms, you bought a demo realm, or you have, access to different customer realm based on your S user ID, you'll see all of those options listed there at that time. So for here, we'll just, click on, this one. Then it's just a matter of what is your description, and again, this really does follow a lot of the same process flows that we saw in the previous Connect world and developing a service request or an SR. So I'm going to just put in here, sort of a test issue. Then language, obviously this can be changed, based on different choices, that are there and available. It always defaults, sort of based on your user. But then when I go into the system, now it's going to allow me to select, which realm am I going into, which realm am I trying to access. So then we'll click on this, and then under the product, again, all these little search items, will be very helpful just to sort of, push you in the right direction. So, we'll just say sourcing, I'm just going to click on information just so we can sort of push our way through the process. What you'll see here, and again, this is very similar to what they did in Ariba Connect, it will start to make recommendations based on what you have provided in the information and in the notes, or as part of the drop downs, it'll start populating information based on what you feel like your issue might be. If I go into the support functions, this would be, so it's project functions. So if I go into, we'll just type in, maybe a couple of different areas. So it's not listed there. So I'll just go into, you click on the all, then it's going to give you all your choices that are available. So then I'll just click on strategic contracts. And this is where the priority. Now I know this is oftentimes a sense of frustration because, when you're in the middle of working an issue or reporting an issue, it's a high priority for you because you want to get it resolved. You want to make sure your team is able to do what they need to do within the applicable realm. But what Reba does, they'll still do it in future state. They'll review it. If it's not a production down issue, they're not going to call it a high or a very high necessarily. If it is an inhibitor for you as far as production go live, that is still prioritized the same way. That will still be a high or a very high. If it is a production down issue, that will also stay as a high or a very high. But if I put in something like, as an example, my reports aren't working, again, this is going to be something very important from a customer perspective because you need the information. You want to make the right decisions based on the data that's provided. But from an Ariba perspective, if you put it at a very high, they more than likely will downgrade it, to a medium or even potentially a low. So that process, still does remain the same. So you'll still have the ability to go in and edit, the different cases or to review the different cases when you get feedback from Ariba. And you would be able to, still have your escalation or you need to talk to somebody or chat with somebody. I know in the previous world, the feedback to management option was there after a certain amount of days. But this is where, that the priority aspect, and really all of these aspects will remain very similar to what you see in the current Connect world. If we go into, just click on continue, now it's asking, do we have any issues? Here again, it's trying to make a recommendation, sort of based on sort of what the issue might be. They're trying to troubleshoot based on keywords. And this is something where Ariba has put a lot of investment in, and they're going to continue to put in a lot of investment into artificial intelligence. So they're investing a lot of money to make sure that they're looking at keywords, sort of, what is being input, how it's being input, to try to provide solutions up front without having to push a case to their support team. But again, if these don't work, you still have the option to still continue. Okay, now what do you want to do? Do you want to have an expert chat? So this is where, again, it's a chat bot, and not necessarily a chat bot. This will actually be a live person that will eventually get on the line that you'll be able to interact with. And again, it'll give you it's less than 2 minutes. So in a lot of cases, this might be the best way to go to try to get a quick issue resolved. Especially if it's not a technical issue, maybe it is more of a, they'll give you some other tips or some other ideas as to navigate here, or maybe click on this button or try to do this prior to actually submitting a case to Ariba support. You can also schedule time, with an expert, a 30-minute session to go through SAP specific software. Now, again, this is only going to be active Ariba software. One of the issues that has come up previously from our customer base that we've heard is that, I still utilize, as an example, we still utilize ITK, Integration Toolkit. But as of December 31st, the Integration Toolkit was no longer supported. So if a question goes to them for ITK, they may push you to a different resource that SAP has available, or they'll push you to some documentation. But a lot of times Ariba support will be very hands-off with that because it's just not something that they support anymore. And that was something that was provided to all customers, partners alike, 6 to 9 months ago. And again, if this doesn't work, you can create a case. So again, that would follow the exact same process. These other two here that you may not have seen before it's almost like it is what it says, like a community board. So this has any customer that has access to Ariba or has access, into submit a case or to submit, something on a community dashboard. They can actually post a question on like a public chat board. And if another customer or another Ariba technician gets out there and sees this out here, they may respond to your question, or they may, go in to give you a little bit more, ask you a few more questions about what issues you're having, what information you need, etc. We have actually at Primacati, we've actually used this function quite a bit, and we've had great success with it. Sometimes, it's still sometimes it's still the answer is still, you need to submit a ticket. You need to submit that to Ariba support for further investigation. But there are a lot of times where they're like, oh yeah, I've experienced this before. You just try this or do this. In the end, it still may not answer your question, but again, about 50% of the time, we've been able to get feedback and information from other individuals through the SAP community to where we didn't have to submit a case at the end of the day and interact with Ariba support. So this is something I would encourage everybody to be able to utilize. And you can do this for all the different Ariba modules. They even have integration sections. If you have an SAP backend, they have one specifically for CIG and some of those interactions. They have some for buyer and sort of the supplier onboarding, sort of processes. So they really do have different community groups for each one of the specific modules that are out there. And then, a level of peer review. So again, it's just an external group of high-level experts that can sort of help, receive, sort of feedback or answers, very similar to the community group. But this is really somebody that looks to be very much more specific to the actual types of questions, that you're asking and that you're interacting with. And at any time, obviously, there's these more info tabs on the side. If I click on the one for this one, so it'll actually tell me, how do I get started, or how, just sort of basic information that might be part of your request. So here, I'm just going to actually go through and I need to create a case. So none of those answers really helped me. So again, it's going to go through very similar to what we've seen before when creating a case on Ariba Connect. So I can just go through and just, I need help with an Ariba report. I am getting an error when clicking on submit. I think in the report case, it's actually done. And it would actually create that report. Obviously, the more detail, just like everything, the more detail you can add in here, the better. You want to be able to click this. This is a new one. I don't remember this one being actually on the Connect side, but it sort of gives them permission to be able to sort of, walk through the steps and reenact that, especially if it's, in like a non-production, type environment. But again, okay, what are the steps? What did you do to try to resolve this issue on your own? And again, the more detail and the more information, the more clarity you can provide on this, the quicker Ariba support will be able to diagnose and really be able to help resolve, any of those outstanding issues. So, went into pre-package, and so I'm not going to go into a ton of detail here. You don't want to see me type. Pre-packaged report and received an error. And also helpful, you'll still have the ability to add in attachments. So you'll see you can add in information into here where and again, whatever you can provide to be able to help SAP support better troubleshoot the issue and get a quicker resolution is always the better. So, and you'll see all these different ones. So you can insert a link, you can, more formatting if it helps as far as to itemize and isolate the actual issues that you're running into. But you'll be able to do all that from here. So then once you enter your information, then it's, this is also different. When did you start experiencing this issue? Because again, it could have come down to, was it driven by an Ariba release? Was it something that, happened specifically, for some reason on your realm specifically during a specific date range? So you'll be able just to select, your certain dates. So we'll do it for today, or it started, say, yesterday. Okay. And then opt the end date, if the issue is still going on, obviously we don't have an end date. So that one's optional. So we're not going to put anything into there. So now if I click on continue, now here is again where you'll be able to drop and drag your files. If you have screenshots, sometimes you can do exports out of the system of, CXML files or text files, whatever that might be. Again, anything you can add into here to be able to help them troubleshoot and get as much information as possible is definitely appreciated. You still have your attachment limitation size, so just be aware of that. we can't put, a lot of, if there's a lot of, 4 or 5 files that has a lot of data in it, Ariba won't be able to post that and be able to submit that. So just be, cognizant and aware, obviously, of that piece. So now if I click on continue, so then again, it's just sort of gonna ask you, like, who's reporting it? So that would be me. Who's the primary contact? So again, that can be me as well. So here, if I'm looking at the select, so it's going to look at who on my team is also set up as a designated support contact, who should receive information about a case, and I can click on them to add them as a contact as well. Or the primary contact is actually going to be, this is who Ariba support will reach out to if they need more information or if they do have a resolution for this case. But as a secondary contact, if there's other people who need visibility into it, or there's other people, who can help, assist with troubleshooting or just more information, you can add them as a secondary contact that as well. And then the system opener, again, this could be one where, it could be, just anybody else on your team that might, sort of be interacting directly with the system itself that might also need, some levels of notification. So this is actually, it's nice. I remember Ariba support would allow us to do that through Connect. You pretty much had to do it one contact at a time. I couldn't add multiple users, at the same time. So this will allow you to add, potentially up to 3, 4 different users, as part of this, various, as far as this case is concerned. Now here you'll see there's an edit button. So if for some reason my phone number is wrong or my email needs to be changed, I can edit that here. I don't have the option when I add in a contact because that will be on their specific S user ID. So if something is wrong with their phone number, that is something they would have to correct within their S user profile or their S user ID. And again, it looks like here I can also add more contacts if there's more than this that need to be aware of it. Again, production down, system down. You want to make sure as many people are in the know as to what's going on with this case as possible. And then whenever there's a response, then obviously you'll get notifications. Anybody on this list will get notifications that the case, there's been an update to this case. Maybe not quite a resolution yet, but it will say, you have an update on this case. Please check your case details for more information. Once you have all of your contact information in there, then you can actually start going through and actually just click on connect or next. So here, this is sort of the same idea as before as well. So this is your component. So what this does, this is really important to make sure that it does get routed to the right individual, the right team to be able to manage your issue. Now, again, some of these do get complicated, when you're looking at, XX, SER, what does that actually mean? So if we look at this, you can also do sort of your search. If you don't know exactly what it is, you can start typing in sort of keywords and Ariba will prompt you for, is it this, is it this, is it that? If I go into, I don't think this is a test environment, it's probably not going to give me all of them, but let me check all. So if I go in and I do custom, and let me just click on search, okay, then it filters it down. Oh, is this a customer service? And again, it gives you a little bit more detail there, or a customer experience. Okay, well, it's not that. Maybe I want to do, I'll do contracts. And again, sometimes the fewer words, the better, because it will give you, different information. Now, if I do this again, so now I'll just do contracts. So they may have limited information here as part of their test environment. But again, the general idea is you'll be able to search for it. If you don't know, what they're talking about here, you don't want to have to drill down into each one of these individually to try to figure out, okay, excuse me, which is the right one? Which one should I apply? So the search function actually is incredibly helpful, on this regard. So for this one, maybe we'll go down into that. So it's just undefined. But once you've selected that, then you'll have that here under your component. Again, that will tell it where the right team is that needs to start addressing or looking into your issue. You may have experienced this as well when submitting cases, but I know I've done this before and it's gone to the wrong individual. And they'll say, hey, I've reclassified this to XYZ. That team will be able to further assist you. So it doesn't sort of get lost in any sort of black hole necessarily. they do put an effort in to reroute it. Obviously, if you don't get a response back, about it, you might want to go out and just follow up with the case like you normally would. But from that regard, you'll be able to manage and monitor this all directly from SAP For Me. So we'll just save this one as a draft. So again, test environment. So what this will do, this will allow you to submit your case at that time. If all the required information is out there and all of the information that's available, it will allow you to submit that case to Ariba support, and pretty much your job on the support side there is completed. It does mention here, SAP For Me, there still is a level of requirements that you have the right permissions in your S user ID to be able to submit a case. So with my colleague Andy, he'll be going through the CIC sort of process, and it'll be part of the documentation as well that we'll provide. It'll say very specifically what those requirements are to have part of your user profile or your S user profile, so you can submit a case like this. And it's just as a quick note, you have to, again, that's also very permission based. So I think of it sort of as like a customer admin in your system. Even if I'm an invoice user, I can do certain things in the system, but I can't do everything. So I need to go to my customer admin to be able to, hey, I need you to assign this group for me, or I need you to do this for me on my behalf. SAP For Me is set up a lot the same way. The two top tiers really in SAP For Me are called a super cloud administrator. And then there's another one right below it just called a cloud administrator. Obviously, as you can expect, they have different permissions. They have different rights, different things they can do in the system. As a cloud administrator, I can go in and add permissions to users' profiles. As a super cloud administrator, they can do a whole lot more within the system. They pretty much have customer administrator access within SAP For Me. There are other roles that you can set up as well, like, for example, like a user administrator. Pretty much all they can do at that point, they can add users and they can add some levels of permissions. That's really all they can do. So you can actually isolate and sort of configure your SAP For Me realm for your customer or for your company to understand like, okay, who is going to manage the S users moving forward? So if a new employee comes in and they need access, who will get those requests and who's responsible for adding that into the system? You want to make sure that S user has the appropriate permissions. But again, even after you submit this, like, you'll still have the ability to schedule a call. If you don't have the right authorizations, you can still look at tapping into these different options that are available. And again, if it's another case where you don't have the right permissions, Ariba will prompt you, on that front. But if not, then you'll be routed to the right locations to be able to submit your information. So then at any time, if I go back here under services and support, now I will be able to see, since I wasn't able to submit mine through the test environment, I won't be able to see it, but you'll now be able to see your case has now been submitted. Here's the status. Has SAP received it? Are they proposing a solution? Or is it something that's just sort of, it's sort of in a pending status right now? But it will tell you, what is a priority installation. So this is just really, it's part of your SAP For Me profile. So it's just sort of telling you where, like, what sort of connections in your SAP For Me system is this specific case connected to? Because you can see there's different ones. So you can have different, installations or different systems potentially that are tied into each individual case. So you want to be very specific, very deliberate with how you're labeling these, just to make sure, one, it gets routed to the right team, and that it gets addressed as quickly as possible without any delays. And that, I believe, is the end of the SAP For Me demo. So back to you, Callie.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. Perfect. Andy, yep, this is our slide here. Again, just reiterating the CIC for you guys. So one of the main interfaces that you're going to be using, our customers and the SAP support organization, and it provides that central point of contact. So again, this is going to be for your non-technical queries, essentially. Hey, what's going on with my existing case? I need to escalate this, or what's the user IDs? And they are available 24/7, 365 days a year. You are welcome to chat, call or email. I actually, total transparency, used it this morning and I was able to get an email from them within a couple minutes. I used the chat as well. And again, this is not limited just to these items here. They are able to help you with much more. And I appreciate you, Scott, going through that. Andy, if you want to go ahead and roll through the next slide. So to wrap up here, the official rollout of SAP For Me is on April 28th. I'm sure Ariba's very chatty. You will get more notifications and more emails regarding that. We will be sending out this recording and the deck along with it. You'll notice that there is actually an additional slide at the end of this deck, which provides a breakdown of the items that were originally in Ariba Connect, what they are called now, and where you can find them in SAP For Me. And at this point, we'll take some questions. If there are any additional questions relating to SAP For Me that we cannot answer right now, or any questions regarding your company, please do not hesitate to reach out to my email, cgant@primacati.com, and I will be more than happy to get my team involved and get an answer back to you as soon as possible. Any questions at all? Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks everyone. If that's it, our team appreciates you taking time out of your day to join us. We hope that this was beneficial and we look forward to speaking with you soon. Thanks everybody.